Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing another season preview for the 25-26 NHL season, and today's team we're going to be covering is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, obviously, Toronto is perpetually talked about, and I enjoy it. Like, honestly, I'm not a fan of the Leafs, but I think a lot of people this past season we're pulling for them a little bit, to finally, especially against Florida. I think there were more people than usual there. Like, come on, Toronto, just get it done already. Like it just at least beat Florida, and then they didn't. Um, in terms of how I think their season's going to go this year, obviously a bit of a new look, but it's weird. It's like you think that there's like a real new look for this team because Marner is gone, but he's really just one player, and obviously they've been adding some different pieces in since he's left. You now have Machelli in the fold, Joshua in the fold, but the rest of the team is pretty much the same. And I don't know. I think like this probably. I mean, Leafs fans could correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I think Leafs fans, for the most part, are probably like just unsure about what to expect from this team. I think most are probably pessimistic, and it makes sense given how things have gone in recent years with this team. I really thought this year's team had a chance. Like, I really did, and then they go up 2-0 against Florida, and it's like finally they're gonna do it, and then they didn't. I don't know. And I think for a lot of Leafs fans going into this season, they don't really care about how the season goes. It's like just get in the playoffs and then hopefully do something. This team should make the playoffs. I think there's some people that are wondering if they make the playoffs because Marner's gone now and they haven't really replaced it. Listen, you still have Matthews, you still have Nylander, you still have Tavares, you still have a decent enough roster around those guys. The defense is strong. I really do think their defense is strong. I know there's a lot of conversation about Morgan Riley and, obviously is cap hit and is he living up to it? No, but he's a good defenseman. I think their defense core is pretty strong. I think it should be able to hold them together, no problems. Goaltending it's they got pretty good goaltending. Stollers and Woll are a pretty good tandem, and I don't know who's going to kind of emerge, if they're going to keep going with that 1A 1B, or if one is going to emerge and kind of take over the starting position. But either way, I really don't think that, like, on the back end and in net they're fine. It's weird, but it's like offensively that's where kind of the questions kind of arise. And this has been the weird thing about Toronto. It's like they've had this core four. Now they don't, obviously, but they've had this core four in the playoffs, especially. It's the offense that dries up, and it's like, how is the offense drying up with this team? What is going on? And I think we're, looking ahead to this season and what they've put together. It's hard to look at this roster and say, okay, this group is going to be able to produce throughout the regular season, because I don't know. I'm not. It's not as convincing, but they have elite talent. You still have Matthews, definitely Matthews and Nylander. Tavares, you don't know exactly what you're going to get with him. I don't think you're getting 38 goals again. I'm pretty sure he scored 38 last year. It's great that they got him at a really good contract. I mean, that was probably the best contract they've signed in a long time, which I'm sure Leafs fans are happy about. But maybe not all of them, because some of you guys are probably like, oh, well, he hasn't done anything in the playoff, or team hasn't done anything in the playoffs, so get rid of Tavares. $4 million for Tavares, I don't care where, even though the team hasn't broken through, like, that's just a good contract. You take that. Like that it's hard to get contracts like that. It's hard to sign. You got for the 38 goals, you take it, despite everything that's happened in the playoffs with them. But I don't know what he's going to do this year. Maybe he scores 30. I mean, if he scores 30, that's fine. He regresses a little bit. He scores 30 goals. That's okay. But where are you getting the rest? Because you're losing a lot of offense with Marner. Despite his problems in the playoffs and whatever, you're still losing a lot of offense there. And it's like, okay, where is it now going to come from? Who's going to step up? Who's really going to take that next step for them? Obviously, there's a lot of a lot of hope in Nyes. He signs that long-term deal. Should be good for, you'd hope, 30 goals. But like my questions, at least in terms of what they have going on, this is I'm looking at the roster on Puckpedia. That's usually how I do these season previews. When I'm looking at the rosters, I'm just looking at what they have put together right now. Things can change obviously between now and training camp and all that, and you never know. There might be some PTOs, or right? That's what they are. Yeah, that's what they're called. I mean, last year they brought in Pacioretty on one of those, and look at how that worked out. It's like you never know what piece you might find that right before the season that could help. I don't know if it's gonna monumentally change anything, but right now, offensively, there's questions with them. There's definitely questions, but again, I have enough faith in especially the their center position is solid. Matthews, Tavares, Watt, and Lawton. That's pretty good center depth. Like that's pretty solid. Is it perfect? No, but that's good enough to get you in the playoffs. And if you're Toronto, I mean, obviously all you care about is what happens when you get to the playoffs, but you got to get there first, right? You got to get there first. And to me, that center depth is good enough to get you easily get you in the playoffs. Like nobody. I don't know if they're winning the division again. They won a division, right? Yeah, they won a division. They were in a dogfight with Tampa at the end. I don't know if they win the division again, but I mean, it's going to come down to like, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, is Florida going to come? I don't know if Florida, it depends on what Florida is trying to do this season. If they want to have a good regular season, or if they're going to kind of just coast in like they did last year. So they might not be fighting for it as hard, but is Toronto going to be fighting for it as hard? Like, they could win. This team could win the division. Like it could. If everything goes right and the pieces mesh well together, and they're probably going to have to change their style a little bit, which I'm curious to see if this team starts to look even more like a Berube team. Because I think at times last year, Toronto started to look like a Craig Berube team, and then there would be moments where they kind of fell away from that. And those were the moments where Game 5, Game 7 against Florida, you're like, oh my God, here we go again. This is the Leafs that have been struggling for years and years and years. But there were moments where they looked a little different, and I think that's why a lot of people, more than usual, were a little bit more optimistic about the Leafs in this past playoff, because they did look different in the regular. They did, and granted, they just fell right back into their old habits, and that was that at the worst time possible. But they were showing that they were kind of changing their style a little bit. And I wonder if giving up Marner and bringing in Waugh, now you have Joshua too. I don't know if enough people are giving, like, Waugh is a very important piece. And the fact that he got Waugh for Marner when he could have gotten nothing, that's as good as it can get in a bad situation. And I think Waugh is going to be a really important piece for them. Joshua's a sneaky little good ad as well. Like these are pieces that you look at now and you're like, okay, we like it, but you don't really appreciate them until the playoffs, right? That's when these guys, you look at these players, you're like, oh, that's why we got these players, because if you look at the Panthers and the types of players the Panthers had on their third and fourth lines, you had, I mean, obviously their third line was kind of stacked with Luosterainen and Lundell and Marchand, but on the fourth line they had a Nosek in there. They had was it Greer and like just guys that they're not gonna wow you in the regular season, but come playoff time you start to appreciate them a lot more. And to me, Josh was a huge, that can be a really important ad for them. Obviously, health permitted. He struggled last year because of cancer, but he should be able to bounce back. He's a really good player. That's a really good player to have in your fourth line. These are players that Toronto hasn't really had on those lines. So I'm curious to see how that works if he meshes well with Berube under this system. I don't remember if Joshua played for Berube at all. I think he may have, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think he may have played under Berube at some point. But regardless, that's I think that's a good ad for them. I do think that's a good ad for them. Wash should be great. Like there's pieces here on the wings. You have some questions, obviously. Domi, McMahon, what are you going to get from these guys? You hope that Domi scores a little bit more this year, but he's a bit of an adventure, you know. Like when Domi's good, he's really fun to watch, and then when Domi's not good, it's not good. Like at least for what I've seen. So I don't know what to expect from him. McMahon, hopefully McMahon progresses this year. Machelli's interesting. I think there's a lot of questions on their right side with Machelli, Yarncrow. Lorentz should be fine. I know Toronto fans really like Steven Lorentz for the most part. But Machelli and Yarncrow, I don't know what's gonna happen there. Like that's probably the weakest point for the Leafs is the right side, beyond Nylander, of course. But Machelli's there's a chance that he really excels. I mean, who knows? I mean, a guy put up a good amount of points a couple of years ago. I don't remember exactly what, but he had a really good season. I think they were still the Coyotes at that point, but who knows? I mean, maybe playing with Tavares could be pretty good for him, and he produces at a good rate. But then I think, again, a lot of what Toronto is going to, like fans especially, are going to be looking at is how are these guys going to perform in the playoffs? And when it comes to Machelli, is Machelli a guy that's going to help you win in the playoffs? You know, I don't know. I don't know if his style is going to necessarily mesh well with, you know, if they're running into Florida in the first round, if they're running into Tampa in the first round, if they're playing Ottawa again, even Ottawa. You know, they beat Ottawa, but Ottawa's got a year under their belt now. They're going to be pretty fired up to try to break through themselves. So anybody that Toronto's going to run in the first round, it's not going to be easy. It's never easy. And is a Machelli a type of guy that you want on that right side in a playoff series? Is Yarncrow? I mean, Yarncrow's pretty good defensively, but when it comes to the offense dries up a little, there's questions. Again, there's a lot of it really, I think the biggest questions for Toronto are offensively, which is crazy. But like defensively, I think they've constructed a really good defense. McCabe, Tanev, Riley, Carlo, Benoit, Ekman, Larson, you're fine. Like health permitting, that's a really good top six that they have. Like that's I don't know what else you could look for. Like that's I mean, maybe you don't have that like elite defenseman. That's some, they don't have a Seth Jones, but when you have a defense by committee like that and good goaltending, I really think that they'll be fine. And I guess that kind of makes you wonder, like, is this team going to buy in even more into Berube's kind of system because they don't really have that as much offensive firepower as you would think and hope. So maybe there's going to be more 2-1 games, 3-2 games for Toronto throughout the year. I think if you see that, like if Toronto plays that type of style throughout the year and you see a lot of those tight checking games where, again, you don't expect because it's Toronto, but they're slowly starting to change the makeup. And when the Tree Living talked about the whole changing the DNA, they're kind of changing a little bit. They haven't changed it entirely, but Joshua and Waugh, that's changing DNA. It's slow. It's a slow process. I think they have more moves to make. I think in an ideal world, you bring in like one more of those type of players, and you find a way to get them in and maybe swap them out with Yarncrow. It's just that top six is definitely, you wonder how they're going to look come playoff time. But that's playoffs. We'll see First, they got to get there. This roster, as is, I think it easily gets you in the playoffs. So right now, this is the third team that I'm doing a preview for. I would definitely think that Toronto will make the playoffs. I think Florida will make the playoffs again. I don't think the Rangers are going to make the playoffs. So those are my two. So far, the three teams that I've talked about, I think Toronto and Florida will make it. I don't think the Rangers will make it. As to what Toronto does once the playoffs start, I think it's going to be really easy to be like, well, here we go again. It's just going to be Toronto. So I don't know. I really thought that this team could have gone far last year. And I think that's probably why it stung as much as it did losing to Florida, because you're up 2-0 on them and you feel like there's something, you're winning games that maybe you shouldn't win, and then it just completely unraveled and went off the rails. And it's just I can't imagine how frustrating it is to watch as an actual Leafs fan, because I'm not even a Leafs fan, and I'm watching that series. I'm like, oh my god, this team, like, you guys, like, just win already. Just it's there, they have it, but I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when they get there. But this team should make the playoffs. There's no reason they shouldn't. I'm curious to see. I think another move is coming. I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know what exactly they're gonna look for. Maybe they try to move a defenseman to bring in a forward, because I think you could play around with that. Like, ideally, you keep that D-core together as is, but if you can trade off a defenseman there and try to bring in another forward, I mean, that's something that maybe you could do. Like, I don't know if anybody's taking Morgan Riley with that contract. I know a lot of fans of the Leafs would like to see Riley move, but how many teams are going to be interested in that? I don't know. But there's other pieces there, like maybe, move off of Ekman Larson if you want. Maybe Benoit, because Benoit, even though I know he had a great playoff, he had great moments, scored a big goal, had a big assist too on the Domi one in a first round. This is as high value as you're going to have for Simone Benoit. I don't know how much you can get for him, but maybe you could trade a Simone Benoit and bring in another forward, bring in that mix, because I think that's more important to try to fix. And I think that their defense there, they could handle losing like one piece off of that bottom pair. It's not gonna be the end of the world. Granted, is it gonna really, how much are you gonna get back for that? Obviously, that's a entirely different question, but it's a good. And then obviously in the press box you have David Kampf, Nick Robertson, and Thrun, who came in from San Jose, which is, I believe he's defenseman, right? Yeah, he's a left defenseman. So that's a guy that, if you move off of a Benoit, you could just put Thrun in there, right? I mean, so they got, I'm curious to see what they do. I'm curious to see, because I don't think they're done. I think they're going to try to make another move or two before the season starts. So curious to see where that ends up. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Robertson. They got to move him. You know what I mean? Like, they got to move him at this point, because he's just not getting the type of. It just doesn't make sense. Like, he's clearly not going to be an everyday player for the Leafs. He hasn't been. He's scored a little bit. Like, just get him out of there already. Like, move on from him. Try to figure something out. Get something back. Like, he's got to move. I don't know. I don't know why they're still. Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do with Robertson, but I think he should move. I don't think he's gonna. Even though this is probably as good of an opportunity as he has, like, I don't see why you couldn't put Robertson in the position that Michelli is gonna be in. Like, is Michelli that much better than Nick Robertson? That he had a good season, but like right now, I don't know how many points Michelli had last year, but I don't think it was anything that's like eye popping. That's like, okay, this guy has to be on our second line. This guy has to be over Nick Robertson. Like, I know Robertson's game is flawed, obviously, but Michelli's is too. So it's like, why? I don't know. They clearly don't like Robertson. Just move on from him already. Like, get something back from him. I don't know what they're thinking about that. Finally, Comp's a good guy to have around. I don't think they're gonna move him. I would just keep him in the mix. Rotate Comp with whoever else is gonna be in that rotation in and out of the lineup. I don't. He might be in every day, or I don't know. But this is a good team. This is a good team. They should be able to make the playoffs. There shouldn't be any problems there. I don't see why they wouldn't make the playoffs. They might have some struggles. It might not be perfect. But they should get in. They should get in. What happens once they get in? Totally different story. But my bet, as of now, as of July 27th, 2025, the Leafs will be in the playoffs. No problem. I don't know if they'll finish at the top of the division. Be interesting if they took a wild card. If they took a wild card, and maybe that would be a little different feel to them going into the playoffs in a wild card. Not as much pressure. Like, okay, they got in, but was not. I don't know. I don't know if anything's gonna change the way the Leafs playoffs go at this point. It's hard to sit here and say, hey, yeah, they're gonna go and they're gonna go on a deep run. I don't know. But they're a playoff team, so that's my season preview for 25-26 for Toronto Maple Leafs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again soon.